Over the last 10 weeks, I have been building up my mileage from 50 to 100 miles a week. And in this process, it has been one of the most successful training builds of my entire running career. And today I wanted to walk you through how I've been able to do that without facing any injuries, without facing any setbacks, how I've been able to successfully build mileage from 50 to 100 miles a week, and how you can also build mileage in your own training, because I want you to walk away from this video feeling like you have actionable steps for your own training, for your own experience level on how to continue to build mileage, because whenever you build mileage, you have a stronger foundation, you have a stronger base, and the stronger that base fitness is, the stronger that aerobic base is, the faster you're gonna be at running and the better you're gonna get in the sport. And so today we're gonna kind of talk about laying that foundation, laying that base. So we're gonna talk about lifting, eating, experience level, as well as like running form and actually like structuring your mileage throughout the week. And hopefully you can walk away from this video with some very actionable steps. So get out a pen, get out a piece of paper, get out something so you can write down all this stuff that I'm about to talk about, because it is going to get a little bit in the weeds, but if you bear with me, you will have incredible value from this video. So let's dive in. If you're new here, my name's Brock. I used to run Division II cross country track and field at Mississippi College, which is a school right here in the Jackson, Mississippi area. And I ran there for 5 years. That's kind of my competitive running experience. And I also ran competitively in high school. I've been running for 12 years. And that's kind of the background that I come from. I'm a little bit of like a middle distance up to 5K. I ran all the way up to the 10K in college at some points. And I ran all the way down to the 800, I think was probably the shortest event that I ever ran in college. And so anywhere from the 800 to the 10K is kind of my specialty. But now I'm leaning more into some marathon training. Actually just qualified for Boston today. And so super excited to be documenting that training journey here on the channel pretty soon. But without further ado, let's dive into the topic of building mileage. One of the first things I wanted to talk about is that your experience level matters. So however long you've been running, for me, I've been running 12 years. So over that 12-year period, I've been able to build up my aerobic base to the point where I can now run 100-mile weeks. And if I had probably taken some different actions, taken some different steps, if I had had more resources available, I could probably be at an even higher number right now. But over the last 12 years, I've kind of gotten into the point where I have been able to build up my base fitness to the 80, 90, 100 mile range, and that is a comfortable range to me. But if this is your first year running, you don't need to try to strive for that 90 to 100 range, because there is a very, 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 very high likelihood that you will get injured. And so all the benefits you could get from doing this mileage are just going to be completely just worthless, because you're not going to be able to go anywhere in your training, and you're not going to be able to actually build up mileage to that high of a level, because you just don't know what your body is actually telling you. If this is your first year running, then it's kind of hard to understand whenever your body is actually hurt or when it's just hurting from running a lot. And there's a difference between the pain that you experience from running and training versus the pain that you experience from injury, and those can blur if you don't have a ton of experience in the sport. And so experience level does matter. I think the amount of mileage you're running right now should directly reflect the amount of time that you've spent in the sport. So if you've been running for 12 years like me, maybe you're up at 100 miles a week. But if you've only been running for a year, maybe you're at the 20-mile range. Maybe you're trying to build up to 20 miles a week, and that's like your big goal. So the best way I found to structure it is whatever you were doing in your last training build, take those 4 weeks, and now in your current training build, try to add somewhere between 5 to 10 miles into that in order to increase the max mileage that you're able to do. And so you look at your best 4 weeks, you average that number, and now in your current training build, you try to run 5 or 10 miles higher per week in that build. You try to reach that same number and hold that same number for 4 weeks. And if your body isn't able to respond to it, just go back to what you were doing in the spring and just increase the intensity of your workouts a little bit. Your body will eventually adapt. You have to listen to your body throughout this whole process. And as you do that, you're going to end up becoming faster. You're going to end up figuring out, oh, this is what my body's telling me. These are the signals that I'm getting. Maybe I should pull back on the mileage a little bit. Maybe I should increase the mileage a little bit. Maybe, oh, my body actually likes running a little bit higher in the fall now, and I feel like I'm getting the benefits from it. And that's how you continue to progress as a runner. That's one of the things I wanted to say about experience. But the next thing I want to talk about is eating. I actually just made a whole video on what I eat in a day in the last video on the channel. So if you want to go check that out, it's going to kind of dive into some of the details on that and just what I usually eat. But making sure that you're getting enough calories, making sure that you're eating a carbohydrate-rich diet, making sure that you're getting enough protein. So I think it's 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight is usually what I try to adhere to. So if I'm 150 pounds right now, I'm trying to eat like 150 grams of protein per day, and that's kind of my target range. And then carbohydrates, I'm just trying to eat as many of those as I possibly can, pretty much. I'm not usually tracking carbohydrate intake, but I'm just eating a lot of carbohydrates through pasta, through if I'm eating a Rice Krispie before I go out and run, if I'm doing rice with a meal at lunch, if I'm doing pizza that is pretty high in carbohydrates, if I'm doing a sandwich that has bread and bread's pretty high, if I'm doing toast with my breakfast, then that's also carbohydrates. Add a little jelly on top of that, that's also carbs. This type of stuff is what's going to allow you to fuel your runs. It's going to allow you to feel better whenever you go out, you're running higher mileage as you're trying to build up in your training. So that's kind of been my experience with fuel. The next thing I want to talk about was lifting. And so lifting is one of the most important things that you can do in training. I think of it as glorified stretching. I think of it as you're lifting these heavy weights, and these heavy weights are stretching the muscles. They're kind of tearing these muscle fibers. They're allowing you to strain these muscles, but in the process of straining these muscles is pretty much like extreme stretching. If you're doing a deadlift, you're kind of activating your hamstrings, you're activating your glutes, you are stretching these muscles out, and you're doing it with weight. It's weighted stretching, it's extreme stretching. And so when people ask, do you stretch, do you roll out, do you do all these things, and I'm like, well, I go to the gym and I feel like I get those same benefits that I would get if I were stretching every night or rolling out or doing all this stuff. And so I'm going to the gym once or twice a week, and that's where I get my good stretching session in, pretty much is the best way I can explain it. I have videos right here on the channel as well where I go through my gym routine and what I usually do and what my strength routine actually looks like. And as I build up to higher mileage, I usually only lift once a week, maybe twice, but it kind of just depends. But as I'm going lower mileage, I'll usually lift 2 to 3 times a week. It just kind of depends. I go back and forth between the two. But once I get up to a little higher mileage, your body's going through a lot. You're putting a lot of strain on your body, and so adding additional stimuli through training sessions like that in the gym is kind of rough, and it's kind of challenging for your body to actually respond to. And so you have to be mindful of that as you're kind of trying to build up to a higher mileage number. So the next thing I want to talk about is injury and injury prevention. And my general rule of thumb here is that if you have something and it starts to hurt and it hurts for longer than a week, then you probably need to take a little bit of time off. You need to figure out what's actually causing the pain. Ideally, you figure out what's causing the pain whenever it first starts hurting. So if you have a pain in your knee, then you need to figure out what's causing it. Most of the time, knee pain is caused by tight quads or issues in your hamstrings or sometimes issues in your glutes. And so you can start to work these issues out. You can roll on a lacrosse ball. You can kind of just target whatever that area is that's creating the pain. Usually the site of the pain is never the source of the pain. And so if you have knee pain, it's probably not being caused by something in your knee. It's probably caused by something further up the chain. And so you have to kind of remember that. You have to remember that the site of the pain is not the source of the pain most of the time. And so if you can figure out what's causing your issue, figure out what the source of that issue is, and figure out how to either take a lacrosse ball to it or work out some of the tightness or go to the gym, lifting, like I said, extreme stretching pretty much, then you will actually end up getting rid of the injury through just natural means. But if you aren't able to fix that injury, if it continues to get worse and worse and worse, you need to go to a PT. You need to go to somebody who actually is a professional. You need to talk to them and be like, hey, like I have this issue, like my feet are hurting or my shin is hurting or whatever it is. You can talk to the doctor and be like, hey, like how can we get this fixed? What's causing this? What's creating this issue? I'm going to talk about running form here in a second, but a lot of this can just be fixed through simple physical therapy. It can be fixed through simple means. And for me, like most of the time, if I have an injury, if I have something that comes up where I have pain in my hamstring, or I have pain in my shin, or I have pain in my knee, then I'm like, okay, how can I fix this pain? What is actually causing this? And usually I can find the source of it. I'm like, oh, I have really tight hips right now. I need to work that out. I need to work that tightness out. I need to get in the gym. I need to strengthen those muscles. I need to stretch those muscles out. I need to do this type of stuff that's going to allow me to continue moving forward in training. And usually within the course of a week, I'm able to work that tension out. I'm able to continue training through it. And by the end of the week, I'm like, okay, it doesn't even hurt at all anymore. And I feel much better. And so that's kind of my perspective on injury prevention. And that's kind of what I've been doing throughout this training build. If anything does flare up, I'm like, oh, I got to figure out what the source of that issue is. But most of the time, like stuff isn't flaring up just because I'm in the gym working out. I'm making sure that my running form is correct. I'm making sure that I'm not going overly intense on my workouts and runs and all this stuff. I'm not putting too much strain on my body. I'm making sure that I'm getting enough sleep at night. And with all these different factors at play, I'm able to continue running higher mileage with relatively low injury risk. So another thing that you've probably heard everyone talk about is sleep and making sure that you're getting enough sleep at night. This is something that I kind of struggle with sometimes. I just don't always get the best sleep, and it's just kind of how it goes. So I can get 6 or 7 hours some nights I can get 9 hours. It just depends. I go back and forth, but it probably averages out to 7 hours a night. It's about what I'm getting as I'm running higher mileage, and I feel like that's enough for me right now. But I know if I make a habit of getting 5 or 6 hours a night, then what's going to end up happening is things are going to flare up, because your body recovers mostly whenever you sleep, and so the risk of injury goes way up whenever you're actually not recovering. And so you have to make sure that you are getting plenty of sleep. And so you can do, I know a lot of friends that take melatonin. I've never taken melatonin, but I know a lot of friends that do it in order to try to sleep better. I know a lot of people that will do like sleepy time tea. I know that there are different companies that actually offer like recovery supplements. So Cadence, the company that sponsors me on here, electrolyte company, they have a recovery supplement that you can take at night that actually allows you to, actually helps with sleep. It allows your body to cool off a little bit to where you can sleep better. It has all these different things in it, and whenever I've taken it, I feel like I do sleep a lot better. And so you have stuff like that you can take where it's like, oh, this actually does improve your sleep and it makes you feel better. And so whenever you are able to sleep better, your body's able to recover, and whenever your body's able to recover, you're able to bounce back in training and continue building mileage. Another thing I want to talk about is running form. Now, your running form is, honestly, this has been one of the biggest things that I've focused on in this training build specifically, because I've really tried to dial in my running cadence. And if you don't know what cadence is how many steps you're taking per minute. And for me, like on my easy days, I used to have a really bad cadence. And so my cadence would be 150 to 155 on my easy days. This was like whenever I was a junior and senior in high school. It was really low. And so what that meant was that I was taking these big boundy steps. And as you take these big boundy steps, it puts a lot of strain on your joints and your muscles, and you're just taking these big bounds. And what ends up happening is you get injured because you can't run higher mileage while putting all this impacted strain on your muscles and joints and all this stuff, because you're gonna get injured. Like, that's just how it's gonna go. And that's actually what led to my stress fracture that I got back 2 years ago in 2023, after I was running really high mileage. And on my easy days, my cadence was really low. My cadence was 161, 162, 163, and having a cadence that was that low, even though I was running easy mileage, was still putting added strain on my tibia. And you continue to run a lot of easy miles. If 80% of your mileage is easy, you're running 80 miles a week, it's easy, and you're putting added strain on your tibia through poor mechanics, poor form. Then what ends up happening is your body's not able to respond, your body's not able to adapt to these changes that you're trying to put it through, and you end up getting injured. And so that's kind of what ended up happening to me back in 2023. So this training build, I've really been trying to dial in my cadence and try to make sure that it is dialed into the right number. And so for most of my easy runs, I aim for around 170. And if I can get anything over 170, 173, I'm super happy with that. Whenever I dip under 170, I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little weary about this. Like, I need to make sure that I am focusing on taking more steps per minute on my easy days. But I've started to implement this, and I've started to make sure that I'm taking more steps per minute. And in doing this, it's putting less strain on my tibia, it's putting less strain on my body in general, because your mechanics kind of automatically adapt as you start to take more steps per minute. And so as you start to build up, you don't need to go directly from 160 to 180 or 170. You need to probably increase it slowly over a period of time. And so over the course of months, maybe you go from a 160 guy to a 165 to a 170 to a 175, maybe up to a 180 on your easy days. I don't know. And that's something that I've just been working on a lot in this build, and I feel like it's helped me so much to just prevent injury. Like, I feel like I have like no aches, no pains or anything in my legs, like even though I'm running really high mileage right now. And I think one of the big contributors has been working on my mechanics and working on my cadence and making sure that I am in the right zone for my easy days and my workout days and everything else in between. So next thing I want to talk about is fueling and hydrating. And this is during your runs, after your runs, before your runs. We talked a little bit about diet and making sure that you're eating a carbohydrate rich diet, because I feel like a lot of the fueling that you need to do for, let's say you have a big workout tomorrow, most of the fueling you're going to do for that workout is going to be in what you eat today. And so making sure that you're eating carbohydrate rich stuff before you go out and you do a workout tomorrow, like making sure that you're carb loading pretty much the day before. So that's kind of like one of the big things that I've learned, is that if I can eat a lot of carbohydrates the day before a long run, the day before a workout, the day before whatever, especially as I'm building up mileage, like I'm just running a lot of miles, so every day feels like I'm running a lot, and so I need a lot of carbs in my diet in order to feel like decent about myself, in order to feel decent in the middle of a run. And so I try to make sure that I'm getting plenty of carbohydrates throughout the day before, as well as like the day of. If I go and I eat a Rice Krispie or I eat something the day of, then that's kind of like super important. And also making sure that I'm hydrating the day before and hydrating the day of a workout. If the workout's in the morning, then I'm making sure that I'm hydrating that night, that day before, like making sure that I'm getting plenty of hydration in. Also taking like electrolytes the day before, taking electrolytes the morning of, taking electrolytes throughout the run, taking electrolytes after the run. It depends, like it's and or on a lot of that stuff. So maybe you're not always taking electrolytes before you run, but maybe you're taking them in the middle and after, or maybe you're taking them before and in the middle, but not necessarily after. It kind of just depends on what your preference is, what you like to do. But for me, I usually take electrolytes some before and during, and then some after, and I find that that's helpful. And the company that I use is Cadence, and so I actually have a discount code with Cadence, code Brock. And so if you want to get some electrolytes for yourself, go to usecadence.com and you can get some there. I'll link it in the description below. And also, like another thing, a lot of people talk about like carbohydrates and what it looks like to take gels, and when you should take the gels, if you should take the gels before you run, if you take the gels like in the middle, you should take them after. I don't know, like a lot of people have questions about gels. And what I found is that if I'm doing any session that's longer than an hour or an hour and 15, then I'll probably take a gel with me, and I might take it in the middle. Or if I'm not doing gels, and I'll do some sort of carbohydrate drink mix, and I'll do that sometime in the middle of the run. And so making sure that I'm getting some sort of carbohydrates in the middle of the run if it's longer than like 75 minutes. And that's kind of my rule of thumb. I feel like once I get over anything under 75 minutes, I'm like, I can just do with water and then I'll be fine. I can just eat some food and rehydrate and do everything after the run. But anything longer than 75 minutes, I'm like, yeah, like I need some gels, I need some sugar, I need something in the middle of this run in order to keep me going. And the same is true, like if you're racing, then you have to take a lot more gels, you have to take a lot more carbs. I've heard a lot of people recommend you take 4 gels an hour, and those are like 25 grams of carbs a piece for most of them. And so you're trying to take 100 grams of carbs per hour of racing. And so you're trying to take, if you're running a 2.5 hour marathon, you're trying to take like 10 gels over the course of this marathon pretty much. And I feel like that's a lot, and I don't know if you would necessarily want to do that many. I think for my marathon, I took 7 gels, and I felt like I had plenty of glucose, but I was missing out on the electrolytes, and I needed more electrolytes. I needed salt tablets. I needed something that could get me back up and rolling, because I was cramping so badly because it was so hot at the last marathon I ran. And so I want to make sure that I get the sodium in. I want to make sure I get the electrolytes in. And I think if I do, I'm going to be set up for success for Boston. And so I'm probably going to take a gel every like 30 minutes ish, maybe every 4 miles, and just try to like take one every 4 miles over the course of the entire race. And I feel like that's going to be a good number for me. I probably don't need to take one every 15 minutes or anything, because I feel like that's a little bit excessive. I feel like a lot of people do go a little bit excessive on the gels, and that's kind of a bit too much. I felt like taking one every 4 miles was pretty good for me. And it worked from a carbohydrate perspective. I felt like I had plenty of carbohydrates in the system throughout my marathon, but just the cramps from the lack of electrolytes is really what got to me. And so carbohydrates, make sure that your body can handle it, make sure your gut can handle it, make sure whatever gels you get, that you try them out in your training. So I'm going to talk about the actual structure of increasing mileage and what I found the best way to increase this mileage. And for me, the method I've usually followed is a 5-mile increase for 3 weeks and then taking a drop week. So let's say you're at 30 miles a week this week, and you're trying to increase your mileage. So you would go 30 this week, 35 next week, and 40 the week after, and then you take a down week back to whatever your first week was. So that would be 30 in this case. And that following week, you would go back to whatever your third week was. So if you went 30, 35, 40, and then you went down to 30, your following week would be 40, 45, 50, and you go back down to 40, and then it would be 50, 55, 60, and you go back down to 50. And so that's how you would increase your mileage. And so over the course of 12 weeks, you've increased from 40 to 60 miles a week. And I found that that's a very effective way if you're trying to prevent injury, if you're trying to see how your body's adapting to mileage, if you're trying to see, okay, how is my body responding to the stress that I'm putting it through. That's been a very effective way. I know a lot of people will do a 10% increase, so do a 10% increase for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Let's take a down week, like a deload week is what a lot of people call it. And so let's take this deload week, and then they'll go back 10% increase for 3 or 4 weeks, and they'll take a deload week. And that is a very effective way of training, and I found that that's a very effective way of building up mileage. Like I said, experience does matter, so you don't want to just keep doing this over and over. You don't want to build from 10 miles a week all the way up to 100 miles a week in your first year of running, because that's going to be chaos. And it's like, maybe you could do it, you could follow this training plan to do it, but your body's probably going to break somewhere along the way. You just have to be very mindful of that. And so figure out what your body's capable of. Try not to rush into the process. Try not to rush into running too much mileage too soon, until you try not to rush into running too much mileage too soon, until you kind of understand how your body is responding to the running stimulus that you're putting on it, the strain that you're putting on it. Another thing is, as you start to increase mileage, I found that once I get over like 60 miles a week, once I get over 70 miles a week, I like to incorporate doubles where I'm running a second time in the day. So I'll run 5 miles in the morning, I'll run 5 miles in the evening. And I found that even doubles, like 50% doubles, where I'm running 50% in the morning, 50% in the evening, is one of the best ways to do it. So once my easy runs get over like 10 miles, I'm like, well, I can split this into a double, and I can run 5 miles in the morning and 5 miles in the evening. And I find that it puts way less strain on the body, and it's actually something that I learned from Sam Parsons. And so Sam, he runs for Tracksmith, and so I was talking to Sam about it, and he was like, hey, like a lot of the European guys, the way that they're building mileage is just by doing a 5-mile run in the morning and a 5-mile run in the evening, or a 7-mile run in the morning and a 7-mile run in the evening. And they're able to do this however many days out of the week, and that's a 14-mile day if you run 7 in the morning and 7 in the evening. But yeah, as far as doubles go, like that's something you can definitely start to incorporate. I wouldn't recommend incorporating it right off the bat if you're running like 30 or 40 miles a week. Try to keep it mostly in singles whenever you're running lower mileage, but as you get into a little bit higher mileage, it's kind of nice to be able to split it up that way, and you still kind of get the aerobic benefits of it. It helps with recovery. It helps in your training process of just building up that aerobic base. And I found that it's that's where most people are adding in extra mileage to get to those really high mileage numbers. And that's where I'm adding in a lot of mileage to get to my 100 mile a week number, is through these doubles. So the way that I structure most of my weeks, the way that I'm kind of like breaking down, here's what I'm doing Monday, here's what I'm doing Tuesday, here's what I'm doing Wednesday. Whenever you're building mileage, you are in a base building phase. You're at a phase of, okay, I need to build up a strong aerobic base. This isn't like my peak phase. You're not trying to build up mileage whenever you're getting really close to your race. You're trying to build up mileage in your base building phase, get up to a max number, hold that max number for a while. And then once you get to that once you hold that max number for a while, you take a down week, you take some downtime, you take that taper, and then you race right here. And so it's like build up mileage, hold, down, race. It's the best way I could explain it. So in the base building phase, the way that I'm usually structuring my weeks, on Mondays, I'm doing easy runs plus some strides. On Tuesdays, I'm doing threshold workouts, and I'm slowly trying to increase the rep length of my threshold workouts. So for instance, in week 1, maybe I'm doing 800s at threshold pace, and let's say for me, I'm doing 235 per 800. And I do that for 15 minutes worth of work is my goal in week 1. And then by week 10, maybe my goal is to hit 3200s, or maybe hit 5,000 meter reps at the same pace, but with more volume. And so I'm hitting 3 by 5,000 or 2 by 5,000 at that same type of pace. And now I'm doing 30 minutes of volume instead of 15. And so I've increased that total amount of volume in the reps. I've increased total amount of threshold throughout a training build. And like, that's kind of what I've done over the course of a base phase. I've gone from, okay, I'm doing 15 minutes of volume at the beginning, and I'm doing shorter reps, to at the end of the base phase, I'm now doing longer reps and I'm doing more volume, and I've just slowly increased it, and my body has made these adaptations, and I've been able to get fitter and fitter and fitter, and now my body can actually handle running these longer reps at threshold. So that's kind of what my Tuesday will look like, and then my Wednesday will probably be a recovery run, and that's usually what I'm doing on those Wednesdays. So I'm running some more easy miles, and Thursday I'll come back for a harder aerobic effort, and for me, this is probably about a minute slower than threshold pace. So let's say my threshold pace is 520, then this is a minute slower than that, so this is like 620 pace. So in these aerobic miles that are run at 620 pace, I'm trying to do a set amount of volume, and I'm trying to increase this volume over the course of a training build. So maybe I'm doing something like, okay, first week we're doing 3 miles at 620 mixed into a 6-mile run or whatever it is, and so the middle 3 miles are going to be at 620 pace in the middle of this 6-mile run. And then by the time I make it to week 12, I'm probably doing 12 miles at 620 pace mixed into a 14-mile run. And like, that's just kind of like, okay, this is how we're slowly building. We're incorporating more and more and more And that's kind of the way that I've structured it. That's the way that I like to structure it. That's how I've found, okay, this is allowing me to build fitness. It's allowing me to get fitter over the course of a training build, and it's allowing me to build up mileage and build up fitness in the process. And I'm not getting into any big like VO2 max workouts or anything where I'm really going to the well, where I'm really hurting, where I have like a really short rest and long, fast like reps where I'm trying to run like race pace and stuff. I'm not getting into any of that yet. It's mainly just like, okay, this is threshold, this is hard aerobic, this is a base phase. It's supposed to be hard aerobically, and I'm trying to build up that aerobic base to be as strong as it can possibly be. And so that's kind of what that Thursday is. It's kind of like slowly incorporating this into, you're trying to slowly build up that aerobic system. And by the time you get to the end of the 12-week cycle, you're like, oh, I feel strong. I feel like I've been able to build up fitness. I feel pretty good. So that's on like a Thursday, and then Friday is going to be an easy run, and then Saturday is usually my long run. And so I'm trying to build up my mileage in a long run over the course of a build. Maybe I start and I'm running a 10-mile long run. By the end of the build, I'm doing a 15-20 mile long run. It just kind of depends on what kind of build I'm doing, but right now most of my long runs have been at max like 16 miles, and this week I might do a little bit closer to an 18. I'm not really sure yet, haven't really decided. But that's kind of the way that I've structured my long runs. And sometimes I'll run a little bit faster in those runs. I'll give myself permission to run a little bit faster than easy pace. Sometimes I'll even work down closer to that aerobic pace, which, like I said, is about a minute slower than threshold. So sometimes I'll work from, okay, start our first mile at 7:15, and by the end of the run, I'm running 6:20, kind of like a progression. Sunday's usually my easiest day out of the week. That's my recovery run. 6 miles, 8 miles, whatever it is, lowest day out of the week. I think this is most of what I wanted to cover in this video on building mileage, on the ways that I've been building mileage, on what I've been doing so far. I think this is kind of like where I'm gonna call it. This has been a very in-depth video. I feel like I've sat here and I've talked for a long time, and I've talked about a lot of things, so it's gonna be interesting to go back and edit this. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. So if you enjoyed this video, this is a little bit of a different format than what we usually do on the channel, but if you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, comment down below what your favorite part was, how it's helped you in your training, and I'll see you guys in the next one.